Loss doesn't just take away a person. It takes away a chunk of who you are. It radically restructures your identity. Let's talk about that. So loss can really unravel your sense of self, your identity, especially when you've lost somebody with whom you had a strong relationship, right? Like identity is tied to other people. We have roles that we play in this life. Maybe you're a parent or a sister or a child or a coworker or a best friend. Like we are relational beings, and our identities are built in relationship. If your child dies, I hear a lot of people wonder, my only child died. Am I no longer a mom? Am I no longer a parent, right? That sense of identity takes such a solid hit when death happens, right? First of all, if you're wondering, am I still a parent if my child dies? Or am I still a sibling if my brother dies? Yes, that relationship is actually a constant. Death doesn't end that connection. It radically alters it, but it doesn't disappear it. So identity is a really dense ball of multiple things. We can't really talk about who you are in this loss without first talking about other people's expectations. We work so hard to cheer somebody up or tell them it's not so bad or they won't always feel this way. Sometimes a lot of the support or advice you get from the people around you is to remind you that you're the same person. They want you to go back to the person you were before, as though that is a comfort, that you're supposed to go back to the things that you enjoy. That's not always possible. Sometimes the person you were before this loss is just gone. You don't enjoy the things that you used to enjoy because you used to enjoy them with your person. If that person is dead, those hobbies, those things that you enjoyed, those things that you love to do, they lose their meaning. Or they simply become too painful to engage in. If you really liked to go hiking and that was a really big part of your identity and your person died in a hiking accident, you might not go right back to hiking. Or it's going to be as a different person with a different identity and a different understanding of the way that the world works. So you might be getting some pressure from the outside world to reclaim the person you were before this loss. And I want you to really get that that person is gone. That person is gone. We are changing our identities all the time in big ways and in small ways. So this idea that we get sometimes from the outside world that you're not supposed to let death change you, you're not supposed to let your grief change you into a different person, that is already happening on the daily, on a regular basis. We are always shifting and changing and becoming. Grief is just an extra strong way of making our identities shift. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. So before we talk about more positive, maybe growth-related aspects of identity and grief, identity is really a way of talking about roles. The roles that we play in the world, whether that is as a parent or a partner or a boss or any of those things, but they're also the roles that we take on ourselves. I am a person who loves to cook. I am a person who enjoys outdoor activities. I am a person who really likes to read books. That experience of loss sort of shoves that foundational identity off of its foundation. It makes you question, who am I really? What am I doing here? What are the things that I might want to do? What are the things that I never want to do again? Those are the sorts of questions that we ask ourselves all the time, sort of below our conscious level, and grief brings that stuff up into the light where we get to ask those questions. I said get to. If you're experiencing grief, this is not an identity change that you are psyched about. This is not a life that you are excited to reinvent. A lot of our positive psychology, a lot of our good vibes only messaging is, who do you get to be now? Because this loss has changed things. You've got all of this fertile territory now. What new self will you build? As though that is an exciting prospect. Maybe it's not. We've also got that narrative that says grief makes you grow into a better, stronger person. I mean, how many times have you heard, at least now you know what's really important, like you didn't know before? Not all growth is great growth. Sometimes your identity is going to change in ways that previous you would not be all that psyched about. Maybe your temper is shorter. Maybe you swear more. Maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe there are losses of identity that can't be redeemed. Not everybody grows in grief. In fact, most people are a mix of interesting things and less awesome things. Getting out of that idea that hard things make you grow and that growth is always positive, that's not really helpful. We need to step outside of that and understand that loss is going to change you. It is going to change your identity. It's going to change your roles. It's going to change your relationships. It's going to change who you think you are. Now, you do get to make some choices here. You do get to make some choices. I think what a lot of people do is they start to panic about, who am I now? How am I going to live this? Who am I going to be if I'm not with this person, or I don't have this role to fill anymore, or everything I loved is tainted now and I don't know what to put in its place? I think we get so invested in choosing something, doing something, having something that feels like us. We're not really comfortable in that in-between territory. But you can't force things to grow after a forest fire. Just because you want there to be new growth that is beautiful and green does not mean it's going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen overnight. Unfortunately, identity shifts and role shifts are one of those things inside grief that we just need to be more comfortable with the discomfort of not knowing who you are right now. I mean, honestly, you've never had to live without this person or without this health or whatever it is that you've lost. You've never had to be this person before. Of course, you don't know who you are yet. You've never had to live without your mom before. You've never needed to be a person in a body that doesn't function the way that it used to before. You've never had to be this person before. Give yourself a minute to feel that. We're so identity focused in this culture. We know who we are. It's the way that we move in the world. It's how we have confidence. It's a weird thing to say, I don't know who I am anymore. It's okay to not know who you are. So again, we come back to that identity change, self-knowledge, who you are in the world. That is literally changing all the time. We change when we meet someone. Of course we change when we lose someone. There's nothing strange about that. That is the process of being human. But let's talk about what you might build in this new self, in this new world that you inhabit. Like, who is the you want to create? I'm not saying it's a party. I'm not saying it all needs to be positive, but that you do have some agency, you do have some choice in who you are as you live this. I sometimes look back at my earlier self from a million years ago and I say, that person built this person who survived. The choices that you make about who you are and what is important and how you want to live, how you want to relate, how you want to connect, how you want to explore this world. Those things build your future self, your new identity again and again and again. Sometimes what loss does is it makes us have really low tolerance for bullshit, right? Like, I'm not gonna go to those PTA meetings anymore because they're a waste of my time, and I know now that life is very short. So changes in identity can also be, I will put what calls me first, and I will, to the best of my ability, no longer tolerate things that waste my time. That's identity building. You do have some power and some control over who you become as you live this. Give yourself the grace to not have it all figured out yet. No one does. Grief or not grief, no one knows who they're gonna be 15 years from now. We figure out that identity by living this day and this moment. Who am I today? Don't look for a solution for who am I going to be now for the rest of this life. Think more about, who do I want to be today? What feels interesting to me today? Maybe it's not going to light you up for the rest of your life, but you do get to make choices about, who am I today? What is this new self that is here, now, in this?